let's move on and talk about Xbox for a little bit. They got some bad fiscal year 26 Q2 results. This comes from Shinobi over on X or Twitter, and they said total gaming revenue was down 9% year over year. Content and services was down 5% year over year, and hardware revenue dropped 32% year over year. Microsoft is having a really rough time. I mean, most of the time when we talk about Microsoft, they're like, yeah, they laid off these guys. They're not doing well in hardware, but they're making a lot of money in their services. It seems like it's starting to go back down. What's up, Rich? You're making a face. I see that face.
I want to say that this is another one of those arguments that like Carrie and I have had a bunch. And like, if you notice, like in these reports, there's not a lot of detail. But I want to say one time we had an argument and I was like, I don't know how much money Xbox has ever made. Like, I don't know that they've ever been like really in the black. Like, it's hard to tell. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, but they usually they'll say like this is just a fiscal year report. They're telling us the percentages, and they're telling us the percentages are bad. Most of the time, they tell us the percentages are good, right?
That's true. They do tell us like how much they've grown, how much the Game Pass user subscription has gone up. Yeah, so I am
how much
curious.
They're listening to us.
That's it. All the metrics. Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Russ?
I will add that there's a tweet that we're looking at that has this, but there's a link to the Microsoft investor actual website, and it says that revenue was 81.3 billion and increased 17% year over year. So the revenue is still going. Like Microsoft's still making money.
Yes.
They're making more money, but Xbox in particular, maybe not.
Correct.
And I also, the other thing I'm thinking to myself is like, okay, hardware revenue dropped 32%, but I'm assuming that Xbox Ally X and all those sales are not being factored in either. Whether or not that would be Asus hardware or Microsoft hardware is obviously a different story, but that could be part of it too. This is like their offloading of this idea of hardware going to somebody else, at least in the handheld space. I mean, I have the MSI Claw that I'm reviewing right now. I've been testing it out for about a week, and it came with the full game experience or full screen experience on it just by default. So,
oh, nice.
Yeah, I feel like there is, they are getting away from hardware purposefully, and then this is a reflection of that too.
Yeah, and so like there's not. That tweet is pretty much all the information there is about Xbox specifically. So there's not a lot to like hold on to here. So I feel a bit like I'm grasping at straws. But you mentioned the hardware revenue being down 32%. And I think that's interesting when you see that the total gaming revenue is down 9%, right? So the hardware revenue was not, it contributed, but it probably contributed less to total gaming revenue than maybe I would have thought, right? And so like I guess the question that I'm just going to ask, right, is does that mean they were right to take emphasis off of hardware, or is this more of like a self-fulfilling prophecy?
I feel like Microsoft had no choice but to take emphasis off of hardware. I feel like Carrie's going to yell at me for saying this. I feel like the Xbox Series S was a mistake. It was cheap, and it was an entry level thing. And at the time when they said, "Hey, look, you can get a PlayStation 5 for what was it, 400 at launch,
500 at launch,
500. You can get a PS5, or you can get an Xbox Series S for 300 and something at launch.
Pretty sure it was 300.
300, okay.
And then the X was 500.
Right, and that sounded like an awesome thing. And I honestly, at the time, I thought this is the right move because it gives people multiple price points so they can buy the system that works for them. But because it was so underpowered, like devs struggled with it. And they found it just easier to make games that would run on the PlayStation because they didn't want to optimize their games, or the publishers didn't want to let the devs optimize the games. And that caused this. I think that if we had a head-to-head with Xbox and PlayStation, or Xbox Series X and PlayStation 5, I think it would be on a lot more level playing field right now. than we are. Maybe I'm wrong about that. Carrie, yell at me.
So I don't like. I was never. I don't own a Series S. There's lots of good reasons why a Series S should have existed. I always was from the handheld angle, obviously. So I was like, that's odd. That's such a weird number to put this at. So there's a lot of like horsepower in the tank of a Series S. Like they could just upclock it and still get good gains, but they just don't. And initially, the reason was so that they could have more instances of a Series S game running in their cloud. That is a Series X, like Super Series X hardware that's there. So the idea is kind of sound, and insofar as DRAM and NAND prices going ballistic, having cloud hardware that you don't have to pay hardware for, you can just play on a subscription, kind of helps Microsoft now, and it might be way too late at this particular point. But they're fairly like super invested in the cloud architecture part of it, which is more where the Series S comes into play. But there's lots of benefits for doing it. I don't think that the Series X, if a Series X was out there by itself, there would be less negative talking points that would have come up. But ultimately, I still think that from the Xbox One generation, that blow that was dealt to them was something that they would not successfully recover from. And even in the Xbox One generation, when they already started doing their PC day one launch thing, it was already kind of set in stone where the Series X was always going to be falling behind anyway. So I am not of the opinion that just the Series X alone would have changed anything. I still think PlayStation 5 would have been dominant regardless of anything. That's just generally how I feel about it. But to Rich's point, Microsoft didn't make money on the hardware. They never did, right? Like, and neither did PlayStation, not at least initially, and not now either. Like, they're probably scraping by or losing money on every PlayStation sold. So if you see like, oh, hardware's down 30% on their numbers, it's like, oh, phew, like, thank goodness that was costing us a whole bunch. So from their angle, that could be a positive sign, even though everyone's like, oh, look how bad it is. From their numbers and fiscal report, it's actually more than likely a positive. So it really depends on what angle you look at it. Obviously their numbers are up. They're making a lot of money, but they also got beat up real bad. Their Azure, everyone was expecting, like they did fantastic. Azure was like doing crazy. They did like 39%. And because it wasn't 41%, the stock stank. And it like,
You're letting the stank out.
Yeah, dude. Take a look at Microsoft stock right now. It's like a cliff. It's just because of a 2% difference from their Azure cloud business. So they are heavily investing in CapEx. NVIDIA, they don't name it, but literally they're like, so much money is being spent for NVIDIA hardware for AI ML purposes that they have this big, huge CapEx cost, and then there's all this other stuff. So their stock got hit really bad. It doesn't look very good for them right now in a lot of different angles, but I'm not worried for Xbox at all.
No.
Like, this entire year.
Are you separating Microsoft from Xbox?
I am not of the belief that Microsoft is going to sever Xbox from what they have at any point. There is nothing in my vantage point, nothing at all, that suggests to me that they are pumping the brakes on doing anything. And in fact, with their AMD partnership on the Xbox Magnus thing, that looks like it's still a go. That's still going. It's still a monster from that angle. So there's things that I don't see Microsoft stopping. So all of these bad time things that are happening are kind of irrelevant. Like, they have their core customer base. People still play on Xbox via PC or whatever, and they are trying to figure out a way to do that. 2026 is going to be a bad time. So It's going to be a difficult way to navigate for every company, not just Microsoft.
So I will say the whole reason that I brought this up is because of that middle number, content and services down 5%. That's very different from what we usually see. And then when you look at like the idea of, I'm not worried about Xbox going anywhere either. What I see happening with Xbox is they're like, they've looked into the future, and you and I, Carrie, have fought about this many times. They looked into the future and they said, cloud is where it's going to be. So we're gonna focus more on that. We're gonna get beat up right now. They're like, everybody's gonna beat the hell out of us. But when we come out on the other side, we're gonna be positioned to do all this cloud stuff really, really well, better than everybody else. And right now, there's like, I know that PlayStation has cloud stuff. PlayStation, PSN, they have like cloud streaming stuff. GeForce Now, which we talked about earlier in the show, that's really, really good if you want to pay for it. And the Xbox cloud stuff, of all of the ones that I've used, that's one's always been the worst. But I think in the long run, it's going to be real good. I think down the road. And I think that Microsoft is willing to take that beating for as long as it takes if they can come out on the other side and say, by the way, everything's an Xbox, you know?
Right. Yeah. So for the angle of like, it will get better, but it's going to require the Xbox Magnus hardware in their cloud server end for the quality improvement to be felt by everyone, because everything, when you connect to Xbox Game Pass Cloud, Xbox Cloud, it's Xbox Series X's, Super Xbox Series X's that you're connecting to that are running Series S versions, Xbox One versions, sometimes Series X versions of games, and then leveraging the encoding engine on those as best as they can. And they did make improvements, but it's still not super awesome at all, especially compared to like GeForce Now. And the other side of that is right, like NVIDIA is like, actually, we're not even going to sell you 5080s or 5070s anymore. If you want a 5090, just subscribe to us. Like that'll be your way of having a 5090. So it's just the time, time right now. I think by next year, I think you are right that there's going to be this reversal of people's perception of what Xbox Cloud will be once that new hardware gets put in place. And they will have all of this cool stuff and a lot of content to be on there. I think they've positioned themselves very well. I don't know. It'll be interesting how well this hybrid thing actually works. I think that's what ultimately this is going to come down to, especially with the Asus makes an Xbox or whoever makes an Xbox. That whole thing is going to be, I feel like, the make or break moment. But I don't feel like, insofar as Xbox hardware, right? At that point, it's like, okay, well, now we're just a third-party publisher and, whatever.
I can't help but feel like the whole cloud thing is a little bit bleak, because you're right, like the Xbox experience works, but it's not great. The best way to stream Xbox games is through NVIDIA GeForce Now, but that requires two different paid tiers, right? So you're double dipping just to get the one good Xbox experience. And then a part of me, too, is like, I don't want to put a lot of faith in NVIDIA in general to do anything gaming related right now, because they seem, if anything, be backing away from anything that's gaming related right now. And so that's, like, there's no place for me to like invest my attention and faith into right now, because I'm like, well, Microsoft's not getting it, and NVIDIA is too dangerous right now, too. And so it's a weird spot. But I do think that, I want Microsoft to be in a spot where they're backed into a corner, where they have to do a make or break and a kind of a big decision and make something cool and innovative that works, right? And maybe try a few different things, and some won't work and some will. I want them to be in that space, but I don't want us to push them, and by us I mean like the world or whatever, to push them so hard that they're like, you know what, we're just going to quit. So it's like we got to get in this super like small band where it's like, okay, we're putting pressure on Microsoft. People are making it known that they're not a fan of, a 32% decrease in their hardware sales, things like that, right? Like, yes, motivate them, but don't go below the band. We don't want them to drop out, because then it's just going to be Sony and Nintendo. And so we want the competition. We want them to improve, and we want to give them pressure, but not too much that they quit.
I think, first, just that experience that you're giving with like Game Pass and GeForce Now, and like your hesitance there, that just underlines the problem with like cloud gaming, right? Like your fate is entirely in other people's hands, and not just people, but corporations that like do not have your best interest in mind. And so like, yeah, that's why it's a troublesome proposition. But I'll say too, the like notion that your like the pressure that you could put on Microsoft. I think what's interesting is like this whole Linux thing. What happened, Carrie? What'd I say?
I'll go finish what you're saying.
Now I want to know. All right, real quick.
Yeah.
The pressure that I think Microsoft is feeling right now is actually from Linux. They appear, so I didn't think that they cared, right? But like I've heard that they're angry about Linux being a big gaming thing right now.
Why is it so good? Why did we suck?
Right. Yeah. So
Let me sign into Notepad.
let me sign into Notepad. So apparently,
it's like, all I can think of is like there's that there's always this movie where there's the character. He's like, why does everything always work out for them? That's what Microsoft is right now.
Yeah, they're the jealous. Yeah.
Yeah.
Nope. Yeah. I don't get it. So yeah, I think that's where the pressure can come from, is from Linux.
So the thing I was laughing about in my head is like we were just you were talking about like can't trust corporations, and we have this streaming future ahead of us, and it's like the year is 2030. I have 10 minutes to play my streaming game. I try to pay Papers, Please, and I can't because it's not on my family plan. And like, I only have 9 minutes left for this year.
But then you can watch an ad, Carrie, and then you can get 5 more minutes to play.
Yeah, it's gonna be so awesome.
Because
So much fun, guys.
We've seen that like there's an ad-supported tier on Microsoft's cloud, whatever, and
Right, yeah.
like
That's like the free, right? Yeah,
it's the
one.
free tier. But it always starts in the free tier. That's where it
always
starts,
starts.
and then it moves. It never stays in the free tier. They're going to be like, in order to offer our customers more opportunities to play games, we need to make sure that you are watching these ads. So while your game is loading, you got to watch this thing about Tide Pods or whatever.
Dude, yeah. It's like that thing like they're like the marketing people are like watching Black Mirror, be like, these are great ideas. Why did I think of that?
I don't know. We should have thought of something.